Hello, I'm Brad Sarin, Superintendent of the Sun Prairie Area School District, and I have a number of people with me today to present on student behavior and discipline in our schools. I'll start. Again, I'm Brad Sarin. I'm the Superintendent of the Sun Prairie Area School District.
Hello, I'm Dave Fuckstra. I am a member of the Sun Prairie Area School District Board of Education.
My name is Nick Rykoff. I serve as the Director of School Operations for the school district.
Hi, my name is Renee Coleman, Sun Prairie High School Principal.
Hello, I'm Sarah Pranky-Klang, Principal of Cardinal Heights Upper Middle School.
Hello, I'm Tajoy Sago, student at Sun Prairie High School, and I am a junior.
Thanks everybody for being with me today. Tajale, would you like to go over the current state of the Sun Prairie Area School District?
Sure. The Sun Prairie High School targeted capacity is 1,658 students. Current enrollment, 1,771. This means there are nearly 700 students in the cafeteria for each of the 3 lunch periods. CHUM's targeted capacity is 1,399 students. Current enrollment, 1,270. This means that hallways are congested and frustrating. This means bathrooms are overcrowded. Current percent free and reduced lunch is 31%, all-time high. Current percent students with disabilities is 12.4%, 7-year high.
Thank you. So I want to talk about what actually the Sun Prairie Area School District and all of the people on this screencast with me and other people across the Sun Prairie Area School District, our staff, what we're actually trying to solve. So at this point, yes, it is true that we have dysregulated students that are engaging in some behaviors that we would rather have them not engage in, including physical altercations, hallway walking, profanity, some vandalism because of TikTok trends, vaping, and the use of controlled substances at some point, because we're surrounded by states that have legalized some controlled substances, including Michigan, Illinois, and Minnesota. But I want to state that we're actually really targeting how we increase student engagement and how we equip students with coping mechanisms that they can use during the day and at home. How we want to focus students on what their academic plans are and their career focus for the future. We also want to develop communities where students feel a sense of belonging in their environment. And so I just want to start very clearly at the beginning of this screencast saying that we recognize these problems. We are actively working to solve some of these problems, which is what the screencast is about, to increase people's awareness regarding it. And we are committed to figuring this out, first on behalf of our students and families, on behalf of our staff, and on behalf of our community. And I want to say that the idea that we have dysregulated students in Sun Prairie is not just a Sun Prairie problem. The Wisconsin State Journal recently released an entire article about how schools are confronting a wave of student misbehavior that's driven by months of remote learning. And whether you're talking about Lincoln High School or in West Bend or Fond du Lac or right across the Mississippi River in La Crescent, Hoka, or you're talking about Brown County, there are students that are coping with dysregulation because of the pandemic all over the United States and the state of Wisconsin. What is different now that was not clear in the past is that our families and our community have a front row seat. And because distance learning classes have been largely at home and we were at stay-at-home order because of viral videos, because of social media, community discussions, because of a 24/7 sort of a hype cycle with news, and because of a culture of outrage, we are in a situation where our community has a front row seat to seeing dysregulated students.
Interpersonal skills struggle with relationships, building with peers. Intrapersonal skills struggles with impulse control, self-monitoring of emotions, employing coping skills to control emotions. Attention span, symptoms of excessive use of social media. Increased stress and anxiety, crowds, social interactions, adult interactions. Individual agents struggling with structured environments. This is meaning like students wanting to take multiple breaks because during the pandemic when we had to Zoom, they got used to like putting their cameras on pause and doing what they had to do. Frustration with academic performance, isolation and sensory overload to 700 students in a lunchroom.
Thank you. Those are just some of the ways that students have been affected by COVID and now are coming back into schools and really feel the effects of dysregulation. And so what this slide is doing is really, Tajla did a great job of like sort of explaining what's happening with students now as we're coping with some of the dysregulation. I'm going to turn it over to Dave to talk about the expulsion process with the school board.
Can you advance the slide, please? So the school board governs by policy, and we have 12 operational expectations that we expect from the district. Learning environment and discipline is one of our operational expectations that we hold the district accountable to. Just wanted to read some of the areas of that expectation that apply to what we're talking about today. We as a board hold the superintendent responsible to establish and maintain a learning environment that is safe and a culture that is respectful and conducive to effective learning. Ensure that all policies and procedures regarding discipline are collectively developed, appropriately communicated to students and parents, which I believe is very important, and enforced consistently using reasonable judgment. And then lastly, we expect the superintendent to assure that student behaviors that disrupt learning or that are dangerous are appropriately addressed. So this is an important factor for the school board that we hold the district accountable with a policy in writing that is monitored annually.
Here at Sun Prairie Schools, we have quite a few proactive support and prevention measures. We are focusing on building adult and student relationships, and those relationships cross all of our categories of staff, including teachers, custodians, youth advocates, counselors, administrators, social workers, coaches, deans, and the list goes on, including our food service workers. We also have positive behavior interventions and support, also called PBIS. So that includes having a positive behavior matrix that explains what positive behaviors we expect in various learning environments across our schools, and explicit teach tos, which are how we explicitly teach and reteach positive behavior that we expect to see throughout our schools. We have social emotional learning curriculum in K-5 that's called Responsive Classroom. Through grades 6 through 12 is developmental design, and for K through 12 is working on welcoming schools. We have anti-bullying curriculum. That is a second step for our K through 8th graders with an emphasis on LGBTQIA+. We also have a few other measures: digital citizenship curriculum, academic and behavioral interventions that are tailored to each individual student, equity teams. We're working on revising handbooks and behavior response charts to meet the needs of our students. And we have a few key positions to help us with all of this work. Our youth advocates ensure safety in our schools, improve attendance of our students, help them get to class, and improve opportunities to learn for any students who are showing some disengagement. We have 3 youth advocates at Sun Prairie High School and 3 youth advocates at Cardinal Heights Upper Middle School and 1 youth advocate at Prairie Phoenix Academy. We have deans of students, and our deans assist with the day-to-day management of our school's academic and behavior programs. They work to cooperatively assist our staff, and they bridge between our students, staff, and parents so that we can create a positive school climate. We have 4 deans at Sun Prairie High School and 4 at Cardinal Heights. We also have social workers. Our social workers collaborate and consult with educators, our community, families, and other professionals to help create safe, healthy, and supportive learning environments for all students. Currently, we have 1.8 social workers at Sun Prairie High School, 1.8 here at Cardinal Heights, and 1 at PPA. Our community schools work is the hub of our neighborhood, uniting educators, community partners, and families to provide all students with top quality academics, enrichment, health and social services, and opportunities to learn and thrive. Our current community school sites include C.H. Bird, Westside, PPA, Northside, and Patrick Marsh. In addition to all of those proactive supports, we also have mental health support. We work with Building Bridges, which is a mental health short-term crisis intervention team for 4K through 8th grade students and caregivers that helps connect to community resources. They also provide professional development for school staff on mental health and trauma-related issues. We have 2 mental health professionals district-wide. We also are working with behavioral health in schools. This is an on-site therapy with licensed mental health clinicians, and it helps reduce the barriers to access. Behavioral health in schools also provides consultation and collaboration with school staff, and the service sites include C.H. Bird, Westside, Prairie View, and Patrick Marsh. We are working on increasing our group interventions, and this looks like our work through the implementation of CBITS and bounce back trauma screeners that have occurred at C.H. Bird, Westside, Eastside, Northside, Prairie View, Patrick Marsh, C Heights, and PPA. Our partnerships with licensed mental health clinicians help provide group interventions to any students who are identified through that screening process. Our student services staff provides various supports for all of our students throughout their school days. These staff include our school counselors, school social workers, school psychologists, and they use a variety of evidence-based interventions and supports to address social, emotional, and mental health needs of all of our students.
So as indicated in the previous slide, what is PBIS, which is Positive Behavior Interventions, and how does it work at our secondary schools? 1, it is defined a universal behavior expectation. It is taught and practiced across all settings in a school-wide manner. We also look at positive, specific feedback and acknowledgement. It's intentional and it's authentic, which allows students and teachers to build a supportive relationship. Also, there's targeted, specific instruction. It's proactive and responsive to building data. As we look at that data and monitor the data, we look at those outcomes and provide different implementation and perception data to help us guide additional further practices. Also, it provides caregivers an opportunity to engage in schools. It includes multiple voices and perspectives, and including the students and staff along with our caregivers. So here are some different behavior interventions that school-wide we implement in our buildings. 1, we have parent contacts. 2, you can conference with the principal. We also involve the student services, and they have interventions that help those students. We have restorative work to heal the harm done to communities. We have a logical consequence. We also engage in check-in and check-out. We also have peer mediation. We also practice reteaching of expectations. We engage students in behavior contracts. We have our student support services who do MI, which is motivational interviewing. Also, they participate in SBIRTs, which is screening, brief intervention, and referral to treatment. And lastly, we also implement behavior intervention plans, which stream from the completion of FBAs, which is our functional behavior assessments.
Thanks, Renee, and thanks, Sarah. So many of the things that we talked about are really upstream strategies, those things that we try to do to try to support students, support positive student culture, and prevent behavioral infractions from happening. And so once a behavioral infraction happens, there's a downstream element to this that we have to begin to talk about. And so I'm going to hand it over to Nick to talk a little bit about this process.
Thanks, Brad. So I work with all of our school principals and other administrators in handling student infractions in accordance with our district policies. The first step in any after any infraction is to investigate the situation and gather all of the information. That could include taking statements from the students and staff members involved. It could include reviewing video footage. And we want to ensure that we're providing due process to students as we're engaging in an investigation. Once we know precisely what happened, then that allows us to compare that conduct to our behavior matrix or the student code of conduct. That helps us label or identify the behavior consistently across all of our schools, and it helps us level it. We have a leveling system between 1 and 4. For lower level infractions, levels 1 and 2, there's a wide range of responses that include many of the things that we've already spoken about. Once we get to levels 3 and 4, those infractions are often responded to with a suspension, either in school or out of school. And it's important to note that students do not return to class until an infraction is fully investigated.
One of the things that we want to make sure that people understand is that we do have students with disabilities, and sometimes students with disabilities make mistakes just like our students that that do not have a disability. And so it's important for everybody to know that students with disabilities are subject to the same behavioral code of conduct as all other students, and additional protections apply as described by federal law, and that's primarily the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. There is a limit to the number of days a student with a disability can be removed from a learning environment for a behavior that is directly related or caused by their impairment. And that's important for everybody to understand. Students with disabilities may be expelled for a behavior that is not related to or caused by their disability, but they must also be provided educational services. And this is determined by their IEP or their individualized education plan while they're expelled. So, and it's important for everybody to know that these services must enable a student to continue to participate in general education curriculum, although in another setting, and enable a student to progress through their IEP goals, their individualized education plan goals. And the services must be designed to provide a free and appropriate public education. And so for here, I'm going to turn it back over to Nick to talk a little bit about how accountability and consequence works in schools. I'm sorry, before I turn that over, I do want to give you some individual resources that you can look up in terms of other resources, just to find out more about how student discipline interacts with students with disabilities. Nick?
All right, thanks. So we have a wide variety of responses, consequences, and ways to hold students accountable for behavior. As I already mentioned, we use the leveled behavior matrix, which is found in our student handbooks. There are 4 levels to that behavior matrix. And level 1, those are classroom level consequences. It would not really ever include any sort of suspension. When we get to level 2, there's a wide range between a half day of in-school suspension to 3 days of out-of-school suspension. And then, as I mentioned before, we have levels 4 and 5, which are more significant behaviors and do have more significant consequences. Our approach in Sun Prairie is a progressive discipline approach, and that means that students receive a lower response for a first offense and consequences increase for additional offenses as a student goes through a school year. That's the philosophy is based on the fact that we believe that every child every day can learn, and they can learn to change their behavior if given appropriate consequences as they progress through school. We have many alternative approaches to discipline that avoid suspension, and that includes things like educational activities. For example, if a student is found to be in possession of a vape device, we might have an educational program with a student services member in lieu of a suspension. And we also use restorative justice options where all of the parties involved are interested in repairing the harm. That could include a circle, or that could include, for example, a student who engages in vandalism, working directly with a school custodian to repair the harm and even repair the damage. And so those are some of the things that we consider, especially when the level of behavior is lower on that matrix. On the next slide, when we start getting to more significant behaviors, then we start escalating the response. And so, as I said before, our level 4 behaviors are pretty significant and do disrupt the learning environment. And for that reason, the consequences range from 3 days of in-school suspension to a consideration of expulsion. It's important for everyone to know that in Wisconsin, school administrators are only able to suspend a student for up to 5 days for any particular incident. If there's a 5-day, or if there is a need for more than a 5-day separation, then really expulsion has to be considered. When we rise to the level of considering a student for expulsion, the first step is to hold a pre-expulsion meeting. The pre-expulsion meeting could be as far as that expulsion process goes. And that is a situation where we may provide a second chance agreement in the form of a behavior contract, a pre-expulsion agreement, or an actual expulsion abeyance agreement with the student and their family in order to provide that student an opportunity to learn from their mistakes and then determine a way to move forward that would eventually allow them to return to school. In the event that that's not appropriate, we do escalate considerations for expulsion to the school board. School board has the ability to hear the case and then decide whether or not to expel the student. That expulsion could range from early reinstatement within a short time frame all the way up to permanent expulsion. And it's up to the school board to choose anywhere in that continuum where they want to land in terms of what the actual conduct was, and then taking that student's behavior history and other factors into consideration. For those reasons, for the reasons that there are really important legal implications to these kinds of exclusionary behavior responses like suspension and expulsion, it's really important to note that we have to ensure that students maintain access to a free and appropriate public education. And in Wisconsin, students up to age 18 are compelled to attend school. And so it's really important for us to remember it's not as easy as just sending them home. Students who engage in really significant, even very significant behavior do have a right to a free and appropriate public education, and they do have a responsibility to attend school. So all of that is intertwined in the district's response to behavior, including serious behavioral incidents. I spoke a little bit earlier about expulsion, and there are actually narrow reasons why a school district can consider expulsion. Number one, because the student has been found to engage in repeated refusal or neglect to obey the school rules. Number two, they've threatened to destroy property by means of explosives. That would be a bomb or bomb threat, or while at school, endangering the property, health, or safety of others. It is important to note too that students can be held accountable through expulsion for behavior while they're not at school if their behavior off school grounds endangers the property, health, or safety of others, or the property, health, or safety of a school employee or school board member. So these are all reasons why we may consider escalating a student behavioral incident to the school board. And Dave's going to talk a little bit more about that process next.
Thanks, Nick. So how do expulsions work? Nick just covered that the administration recommends students for expulsion, holds a pre-expulsion meeting with the student and the family. And the administration is responsible for preparing a investigation and summary documents for the board. We do not see any of this evidence prior to the formal hearing. So a expulsion hearing is a formal process that we hold. It is similar, not exactly like a trial, where the school board hears the summary investigation and evidence, which could be video, could be statements from students, staff, police reports. The evidence, so to speak, gets presented to the school board from the administration. The student and family have the ability to ask questions of the administration. The student and family then present any information that they have as evidence. The administration can can ask questions of the family and the student. The board can ask questions of the administration as well as the student and the family. And then ultimately, it's the school board, the 7-member school board, that determines whether that student is expelled or not, and any conditions of early reinstatement. Typically, there's a recommendation that comes from the administration for expulsion and any terms and conditions for early reinstatement, but ultimately it is the board's responsibility. We can accept the recommendation, we can reject it, we can make our own recommendations. And I think we've done all 3 in the 7 years that I've been here. So it is a very formal process and procedure. I did just want to offer some personal perspectives on the process of expulsion hearings and expulsions. To me, as a board member, it is the worst task or responsibility that we have as board members. It is not fun at all. But I do believe it's necessary. It's necessary as a board and a district that we have to maintain a standard of behavior, and some behaviors just cannot be tolerated. So I believe it is a necessary process. I think the board as a whole does have a core belief as a board that students do deserve a second chance. So when we look at expulsion, we're not giving up on students, but most of our expulsions are not indefinite. Most of them do come with an option for early reinstatement based on conditions. But we do realize that students may need some separation from the schools, the physical schools, and that is what expulsion provides. But along with that expulsion, I think the district does well to support those students when they're away from school. Sometimes there's conditions for further evaluation and potential treatment for maybe what is the core issue that student may be experiencing. But as I said, most of the time, we do offer early conditional reinstatement and for that child. And then me personally, I like to give a positive statement to our students to leave them with, first thing I like to mention is, what you've done is serious and it is unacceptable within our school district. But I also like to say that, we all make mistakes. We all make mistakes. I hope that you learn and you grow from your mistakes. And secondly, don't let expulsion define you as a person, as a student. And with determined effort and determination, individual determination, you can get past this, and your future can be very, very bright. And it really is in your hands. So I like to just give students a positive message as part of that expulsion process. So those are just some perspectives from me as a board member.
Thanks, Mr. Huckstrap. From here, I'm going to turn it back over to Nick to begin to talk about our relationship with the Sun Prairie Police Department and specifically our liaison officers. Nick?
Sure, we'd be remiss to talk about student safety and student behavior and not mention our partnership with the Sun Prairie Police Department and our school resource officers, or sometimes known as police school liaison officers. We do have 2 full-time officers within the school district, one officer who covers Sun Prairie High School and Prairie Phoenix Academy, and another who currently covers Cardinal Heights and our 2 lower middle schools at Patrick Marsh and Prairie View. The main goal of the school resource officer's presence in our buildings is to foster positive relationships with students and staff and promote that partnership between the police department and the school district. Our SROs are not every day walking around buildings trying to find things to get students in trouble for. Instead, they're trying to form relationships so that when situations develop, students feel like they have another trusted adult to go to and a way to report safety concerns. In addition, of course, our school resource officers do respond to serious behaviors that happen in school or that connect back to school, and they do investigate things like serious physical altercations, investigate threats to school safety. And our partnership with the Sun Prairie Police Department has been invaluable in those situations to ensure that our schools are safe spaces where all students can learn. On the next slide, I just want to make a quick note about student privacy and how that intersects with student behavior and discipline. We do have overriding policies federally on students' rights to privacy and their educational records. And we also have local policies through Operational Expectation 3 with the school board that protect student confidential information. And for that reason, it often means that these situations where students are engaging in conduct, as Brad has mentioned, that goes viral or is featured on social media through video, it means that the district response can seem to be vague or not explaining details of the incidents. And that's largely because we have to be thoughtful about speaking specifically about student behavioral situations. Those behavioral incidents are confidential records of that student. And we cannot disclose other students who were involved to the families who are involved. And we have to be really careful we don't also divulge private medical information about students. So for all those reasons, we just want people to know that we're operating within parameters when we share information about student behavior incidents.
Okay, so one of the things that we want to do also is just dispel myths and somewhat set the record straight regarding student behavior, how we respond to it. And so, for example, one of the things that we know is that while we do see some behaviors of dysregulated students or students that are coping with a disagreement escalate at school almost 100% of the time, what they are arguing about, what the students have disagreement around, did not originate from school. It's something that happened off of school grounds and then is brought onto school grounds because a school is a reflection of the communities that it serves. And so that is a myth that we in an ongoing way want to dispel, and that the disagreements between kids, if there is a physical altercation or an argument, largely are not about something that happened at school. It's largely about something that happened off of school grounds that then is brought back onto school grounds. There's another myth that there is no accountability for student behavior, and Dave is going to explain this.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. So beyond the some of the consequences that Nick had talked about, the in-school suspensions or the out-of-school suspensions up to 5 days, the board has heard 10 expulsion hearings just this school year, which is by far the most that I've heard, actually probably in an entire year as the 7 years that I've been on the board. So there is accountability. Unfortunately, we're hearing a lot of expulsions. And you know, it's, as I said, it's not fun, and it's something we don't want to do, but we are following our policies, and accountability is there.
Another myth that we hear is that there are fights every day, and Ms. Coleman is going to explain this.
First of all, we would like to say at the high school that this is not a very true statement. It's very funny because I have my student here sitting next to me, and both of us, when we read that statement, we shook our heads saying that is not what's occurring in the high school. Unfortunately, we have had some fights, and because people are not respectful of students' privacy, they videotape those and put them out there on social media, which is not what we want to condone or support. We support our students every day, and we know that bringing them back from the pandemic has been a trying and challenging time. And so we just want to let everyone know that the high school does not have fights every day. Unfortunately, we've had 9, We're not proud of that, but we're here to support our students.
Another myth that we hear is that kids fight and are right back into the classroom the next day.
Thanks, Brad. We do want to just make it very clear that our administrators are investigating any fight that occurs. And if students engage in a major physical altercation, or if that fight ends up with injury to a student, there's no way that students are back in school the next day. Sometimes what happens is we may not be sure everybody who was involved in a fight. And so as the investigation is going, we may not have identified everybody who was involved, but I guarantee that when our administrators are aware of who was involved in a fight, through an investigation process, verify that consequences are absolutely issued, and students are not back in class the next day.
Another myth that we hear is that kids are just given a hug and kicked right back into the classroom. And Sarah is going to address this.
So that is also untrue. We use restorative justice as a tool to repair harm. Restorative justice can be utilized in conjunction with our code of conduct or as a standalone consequence. We have found that restorative justice creates an opportunity for students to own their behavior and come up with solutions to move forward in a positive way. Restorative justice is often used to close the loop on an incident between the individuals involved, bringing everyone to the table to come up with a positive solution. And that doesn't always happen through suspension alone. Without closing that loop, we know that those disagreements can bubble back up and cause further harm. As Nick mentioned earlier, sometimes restorative justice looks like having a conversation that's facilitated by adults, creating a behavioral contract, or physically repairing an object that was vandalized.
The next thing that we would like to cover is the idea that how does adult behavior affect student behavior? And this is something that I think that, that we should all begin to reflect upon. At this moment in time, we've got in society a lot of strong opinions, and they're strongly held. And there are instances, no matter really what arena we're talking about, where there's a conversation about second guessing or a little bit of Sunday morning quarterbacking. When we are role models in terms of coping with conflict, when we are role models in communication and relationship building, when we are solution focused versus conflict focused, when we are monitoring bias or making conclusions without basis, or when we enter a situation with an assumption of positive intent versus negative intent, that all affects student behavior. And so one of the things that we would like to advance is that we are dealing with instances, in some instances, where we see that there's a positive correlation between adult behavior and student behavior. And we would like to raise awareness about it and ask really everyone in this community to join us in understanding that how adults act does affect how students act. And when we begin to engage in situations knowing that we're role models, not only in how we cope with conflict, but also with how we build relationships and how we maintain a solutions focused, how we monitor bias, and how we monitor making conclusions, and also how we assume positive intent in others, that does have a positive effect on students and throughout our school community. From here, we want people to know what can you do to help? And so I'm going to turn it over to our student to explain how you can help.
So what can you do to help? You can reach out to us when you have questions. Start with an assumption of positive intent. Model this to your children. Stay solutions focused. Give grace. It's going to take at least as long getting out of this as it took getting into this. Get involved. Contact one of our 5 community school sites to help: West Side, Bird, North Side, PPA, PMMS. Become an avid tutor. Attend and participate in your school's SEO organization. Contact your building principal to inquire about the site volunteer opportunities, for example, the high school cafeteria. Contact one of the city's neighborhood navigators to inquire about volunteering opportunities. Stay informed by watching board screencasts, visiting our websites for topic-specific information. Stay keeping up emails, and be careful of half-truths misinformation, and unproductive viral content that jeopardizes students' privacy.
Thank you, Tajale. And last, what about the future? And so we all understand that lasting change is proactive and it's preventative. It's the upstream work. We talked about the upstream work that this entire district tries to engage in before we have to do the downstream work of responding to a student infraction. And we want to work as upstream, proactively and preventative as possible. Next year, we'll have a more equitable distribution of socioeconomic status and racial composition between all of our schools, which includes our 2 9 through 12 comprehensive high school and 1 alternative high school, and over our 3 6 through 8 middle schools as a result of the attendance changes. We will focus on relationships, building relationships between staff and our students and our families. And we're going to, one of the ways that we will do this is through decreased transitions in between schools. So in increasing the amount of time that students are able to stay at one school, so for example, staying 6 through 8 at Prairie View or Patrick Marsh Middle School, that increases our capacity to build relationships between students and staff. And we know that when our staff and our students have relationships, engagement increases, academic focus increases, a focus on career planning increases, and it's better for our students because engaged students are productive students. We also want to increase accessibility to our extra and co-curricular activities because we know that when a student has school pride not only in their school community, but they're building the bonds of extra and co-curricular activities, that helps with engagement. We want to increase engagement through innovative learning experiences through the academies and our secondary schools. And we also want to continue to expand community schools as a proactive measure to build community through community schools. So I want to say that first, thank you for all of the people that joined me and just beginning to try to explain how we support students, how we support student behavior, and how we respond to student behavior when we have to. I want to thank the community for supporting us. I also wanted just to extend gratitude to all of our amazing staff members who do this work every day on behalf of kids and families. And last, when you have questions, please feel free to reach out. I'm here to answer questions. Mr. Huckstra is here to answer questions. Nick Reichoff and Ms. Coleman and Sarah Pranke-Klang are all here to help answer questions. And so when you do have questions, or maybe you're confronting some area of ambiguity and you might be confused about something, we're here to help. And so please feel free to reach out. And with that, I wish you all the best. Take care.